So I'm fascinated by squatting, not the position, the real estate move. The vagrant sees an empty home, breaks in, makes it their own. They live in your house and you pay the bills there. They have rights to do this. They call them squatters' rights. And don't call the cops because they won't help.
So when y'all came for the first time in here to look at all of this, what was going through y'all's mind?
Your heart just drops and you just wonder what kind of people can do this.
Hi there, I'm Professor Blackmore, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Trial Lawyer Trick podcast, because I'm the trick of all things related to trial litigation, honey child. And if you're dealing with a squatter on your property and you want to find out how to squash all of the BS and how to get right down to the business of getting them out of there in the quickest manner possible, then you better pull up a chair, because today I'm coming back to you to talk about a handy little trick that I've seen work in action to evict a squatter from a property in one of the most squatter-friendly states in the country, and that is the state of New York. Now, the thing about this transaction that makes it work is the use of the federal court system, which automatically stays all state action, giving the real property owner time and space to evict the squatter, because while the matter is within the purview of the federal court's jurisdiction, the state courts and the state court legal system have no jurisdiction over the matter. And so, if you want to see how this works, you better stick around. Now, before I go any further, let me just say that nothing in this presentation shall be construed to be legal advice, and I strongly encourage you to seek legal advice from an attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction. And so, I'm just showing you this technique that was carried out by an attorney in the state of New York, and as an attorney of over 20 years myself, I'm telling you that I was impressed by how well it actually works. So, I'm sharing it with you, but again, nothing shared in this presentation is legal advice. And so, let's jump right in, because there's a lot to cover. Now, if you follow my channel, you should know that I've been following an eviction case that spun out of all of the madness that resulted from the robbery of Bishop Lamar Whitehead that occurred in July of 2022, as Bishop Whitehead was delivering a morning live streaming sermon at his church, which was located at that time at this storefront location in Carnegie, New York. And I'm not going to get into all of the details of a subsequent incident that occurred at that same church location sometime around September 18, 2022. But because the July incident involved Bishop Whitehead's wife and baby daughter, when this woman started going towards the direction of Bishop Whitehead's wife and baby daughter in the September incident during another live streaming church service, well, let me just say, I guess Bishop Whitehead thought he needed to cast out some demons and he damn near snatched her entire wig clean off her head, honey child. And while Bishop Whitehead did not face any charges for the September event because he had a right to defend his family, this incident and the July robbery event seemed to be a little bit too much action for the current landlord of that particular storefront location, and it seems that the landlord declined to renew the lease, or for whatever reason, the landlord-tenant relationship between him and Bishop Whitehead at that storefront location in Carnegie was terminated. But what people didn't know was that Bishop Whitehead was already making arrangements to move from the Carnegie storefront location because he had already entered into a lease to purchase real estate transaction on March 8, 2022 to purchase another church located at 5904 Foster Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. Now, the problem is that particular church location had a church known as Glory of God Church that was squatting on the property and refused to leave. And so, let me back up a few steps and take you back to the beginning so you can follow the steps, step by step, of how you might be able to evict a squatter from your property. And so, back on January 27, 2022, an individual known as Michael Moses, through a family trust entity that he created known as the 5904 Foster Avenue Trust, acquired the real property located at 5904 Foster Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. Now, Mr. Moses, through the trust entity, acquired the property in connection with a foreclosure sale because Glory of God Church had not been paying its mortgage and was in foreclosure. But the mortgage company could not get Glory of God out of the church due to all of the COVID eviction moratoriums and due to New York's extremely squatter-friendly laws. And so, after 2 months of not being able to evict Glory of God, on March 9th, 2022, Mr. Moses entered into a series of agreements resulting in the March 9th, 2022 5904 Foster Avenue Trust Addendum, appointing Bishop Whitehead as trustee to take legal action at his own expense to evict Glory of God from the church premises. In addition, this series of agreements also included some type of lease to purchase agreement in which Mr. Moses leased the property to Bishop Whitehead during that same period of time. So keep in mind, all of the months from March through September or October of 2022, when Bishop Whitehead left the Carnegie storefront location, he was paying lease payments, and Glory of God is occupying the church premises rent-free. And before that time, from January through March, Mr. Moses was paying the mortgage while Glory of God was occupying the premises rent-free. And so, Bishop Whitehead attempted to evict Glory of God from the premises, allegedly, because he is now needing a place to conduct his church ministry affairs now that the owner of the Carnegie storefront location wants to be done with all of his madness, allegedly. And so, Bishop Whitehead attempts to lock Glory of God out of the church by filing a landlord-tenant action, in this particular case, a show cause application in the Kings County Civil Court in New York, but the court denied his application as a result of what they called a failure to give proper notice to Glory of God Church. But again, keep in mind that New York is a very squatter-friendly state, so this is what you're going to come up against in these kinds of states. But I would just employ that you use this procedure that I'm covering here to cut through all of the BS. And so after this occurred, where the court dismissed his action, on or about December the 14th, 2022, Bishop Whitehead allegedly attempted to lock Glory of God out of the church premises. And so this prompted Glory of God to file an application to show cause with that same Kings County Civil Court in New York, which was returnable or set to be at issue on December the 21st, 2022. But in the meantime, before this December the 21st, 2022 date, On December the 19th, 2022, Bishop Whitehead removed the case to federal court based on diversity jurisdiction because he technically resides in New Jersey and Glory of God is a New York entity. And so you can remove a case to federal court based on diversity jurisdiction when you have two entities that are based in different states or two people who are residents of two different states. And the amount in controversy in the case is $75,000 or more. Now, while the federal court technically still had jurisdiction over the case, on December the 21st, 2022, the Kings County Civil Court judge rendered a judgment in favor of, guess who? Glory of God, awarding Glory of God possession of the premises. And so technically what this means is they were blocking any eviction of Glory of God Church from the church premises. But because the case was still within the purview of the federal district court, the Kings County State Court did not have jurisdiction to issue this ruling because the federal court still had jurisdiction over the matter. So this gave Bishop Whitehead enough time and space to evict the Glory of God from the church building. And on December 30th, 2022, the federal court did in fact remand the case back down to the Kings County Civil Court, ruling that it did not have subject matter jurisdiction over the case, again, really because of the very squatter-friendly laws that the state of New York has when it comes to real estate matters. But by then, in my opinion, it was too late because Bishop Whitehead had already evicted Glory of God from the church, removing its belongings from the church premises, and it had taken possession of the church in time for Bishop Whitehead's New Year's Eve church services. Nevertheless, on January the 19th, 2023, Glory of God again urged its application with the Kings County Civil Court against Bishop Whitehead. The matter again being returnable and/or at issue on or about January the 24th, 2023, the Kings County Civil Judge again entered a final order of possession of the premises in favor of Glory of God, forthwith to take place at 5 p.m. on January the 24th, 2023, with the assistance of the New York Police Department. And the judge denied Bishop Whitehead's application to stay execution of the order pending any appeal that he intended to file. And at this moment, you would have thought that Bishop Whitehead was defeated. But not so fast, ladies and gentlemen, because before the January 24th, 2023, 5 p.m. deadline, Bishop Whitehead, as trustee of the 5904 Foster Avenue Trust entity that owns the real property, then filed a Chapter 11 petition for bankruptcy, which automatically stayed all action regarding any property associated with any and all property owned by the 5904 Foster Avenue Trust, i.e. the church building. And the filing of this bankruptcy was the most effective thing, in my opinion, that Bishop Whitehead had done up until that moment, because not only was jurisdiction now in the federal court, but all action against him was stayed by any and all entities, including any law enforcement officials within the state of New York. Because once the bankruptcy automatic stay is in place, no one can touch you, honey child. And so that means any help or assistance that the New York Police Department could have rendered to Glory of God would have been null and void at that time, along with the judge's order that possession be returned to Glory of God Church. All of it was automatically stayed by the bankruptcy. Now, let me say again, this is not legal advice. And I want to strongly advise you to please consult your own attorney in your jurisdiction. But till this day, Glory of God Church remains evicted and it really has no legal right to possession of the church premises since it was purchased in the foreclosure sale by Mr. Moses. Now, Bishop Whitehead eventually voluntarily filed a motion with the bankruptcy court to dismiss the bankruptcy case, and he is still holding church services in the 5904 Foster Avenue church premises, of which he has possession at this very moment due to this technique that was employed by his attorney. And so, I want to back up a few steps because I actually think that Bishop Whitehead waited too late to file the bankruptcy, and I don't think it's that effective to have spent so much time removing the case to federal district court based on diversity jurisdiction either. I think he should have just gone straight to the bankruptcy court from the beginning. And so let me go step by step at this point on how I would have administered this litigation strategy in the Bishop Whitehead case. And so for step one, the first thing that I would do would be to quickly file or quickly create a business trust entity. Now, because the 5904 trust was a family trust, one of the problems that Bishop Whitehead eventually ran into, which in my opinion was not really that big of a deal, was the issue of whether the trust was a family trust or a business trust. Now, this became an issue that was argued by opposing parties in the case, but for the most part, squatters are not going to show up in court arguing with you. So that is why, in my opinion, it's not that big of a deal, because once the purpose is fulfilled, which is to evict the squatter, you can dismiss the bankruptcy case, and you don't really need to be arguing about whether it's a business trust or a family trust or none of that, because your only purpose is to stay all court action so that you can evict the squatter from the premises. Now, after the trust entity is created, for step two, you'll want to apply for a tax ID number for the business trust entity. Now, you will then want to deed the property over to the business trust, and you could probably use a simple quitclaim deed to do this, but again, nothing in this video should be construed to be legal advice, and I advise you to consult a licensed attorney in your own jurisdiction. Then, you want to lease the property to yourself so that you can show that you have a lease and that you're on the lease for the property, and you have utility bills, etc., showing that you are the true occupant residing in the premises. And so you can try this as a first step to flip the script on the squatter if you need to use this type of paperwork, the lease, the bills, and all of that, in the process of trying to lock them out if law enforcement is called. Now, if this does not work, as trustee of the business entity trust, file a landlord-tenant action in the appropriate court in your state, asking the state court to evict the squatter. But you're doing this just as a pro forma matter, okay? Then, as trustee of the business trust entity, you'll want to file the Chapter 11 bankruptcy on behalf of the trust entity. And now be very careful here, because you will not be using your own social security number, but you will be filing as the trust entity, and you will be using the tax ID number that was generated for the business trust entity in step two. Now, you will list the squatter and all known and or unknown occupants at the resident address as creditors in the bankruptcy case. And then you should file a notice with the state landlord-tenant court, letting them know that the matter is now within the purview of the bankruptcy court, and all action in the matter has been stayed by the bankruptcy court. And so it'll be on record with the court and everyone else. You'll have documentation of the bankruptcy, and now at this point, the automatic bankruptcy stay applies, and the squatter cannot take any adverse action against you, and you should then be able to enter and evict the squatter, and any action by any local law enforcement authorities would also be stayed by the bankruptcy proceedings. But let me say again that this is not legal advice, and I wish that you would please consult your own attorney. Notwithstanding, however, as you know on this channel, I just ask and report, and I let you decide. And so, what do you think about this novel little technique that clearly seemed to work in a very squatter-friendly state like the state of New York in the Bishop Whitehead case? Please let me know by leaving your comments in the comment section below. And if you found these tips useful, I hope you'll also give me a big thumbs up. And I hope you'll also consider donating to this video and my entire channel ministry by donating to the Professor Blackmore Cash App. And while you're there, I hope you'll also consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and click the bell so you'll be notified whenever I come back with more of my trial lawyer trick tips. And please also follow me on TikTok and Instagram.